Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're on this quest, right? And we're going to try to uncover the secrets of Switzerland and like how they've managed to stay so stable politically. Is it all, like cheese and chocolate and yodeling? What's the deal there?
Well, let's just say the Swiss, they have a real knack for precision. And I'm not just talking about their watches. They have this way of engineering their political system. It's actually amazing. So they manage to keep things running pretty smoothly, even though there are some, potential bumps in the road.
Okay, so not like a boring, homogenous society then.
Oh, not at all. Not even close. Imagine this. A country, right? Crammed into a space smaller than West Virginia.
Yeah.
And they have not one, not two, but four official languages.
Really, four?
Yeah. German, French, Italian.
Okay, those are three I would guess, yeah.
And Romanish.
Romash, wash.
Yeah, it's a language. You've probably never even heard of it.
I haven't, no.
It's been around since Roman times. It's wild.
Wow. Okay, four official languages. I mean, in many places, that's like a recipe for disaster. How do they keep things from falling apart? That's what we're going to explore today, right?
Eh.
We are diving deep into Swiss democracy
Yeah. By Wolf Linder and Stephanie Mueller.
to really understand how this whole system works.
It's a fascinating book, really. It's like they give you the blueprint, like a blueprint to this, this finely tuned machine. It reveals how Switzerland, a country that came out of like all this independent cantons, they even had a civil war, and they managed to become this beacon of stability and unity. And it all boils down to how they approach their politics.
Okay, so what's the secret ingredient? What's their special sauce?
Well, it's not really one single thing. It's more like a blend of clever mechanisms they've come up with. But one of the key ones, one of the main ingredients here is federalism, but like with a Swiss twist.
Okay, federalism, that's where power is split, right?
Right.
Between a national government and those smaller regional governments, kind of like states in the US.
Yeah.
But what do they do differently?
Okay, so think of it this way. In most systems, with federalism, the central government, they're calling the shots on the big stuff. In Switzerland, no. The cantons, that's their version of states, they hold on to a surprising amount of power.
Okay.
We're not just talking taxes or local laws. We're talking education. We're talking about building hiking trails. Like, seriously.
Wait, hold on. Hiking trails? You're kidding.
I'm not kidding. Even something as simple as, building a hiking trail in Switzerland, that might actually require a constitutional amendment.
You are kidding me. That seems like a lot of red tape for like a little footpath in the woods.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it sounds crazy, right?
Yeah.
But it just shows how much emphasis they put on local control. It's like each canton gets to be its own little political world, right? Within the larger framework of Switzerland. Which leads us to another key thing in their recipe: direct democracy.
The power of the people. Now you're speaking my language. Tell me more.
Okay, imagine this, right? Imagine a political system where you actually have a say. And I don't just mean like every 4 years when there's an election. No, I mean multiple times a year on specific issues. That is everyday life for the Swiss.
What?
They call it direct democracy.
Right.
And what it means is the citizens have this direct line to shaping the laws, shaping the policies through these frequent referendums and initiatives.
So instead of like relying only on elected officials to get stuff done, Swiss citizens, they can kind of take matters into their own hands.
Yeah, precisely. They vote on specific laws, they propose new ones, they can even amend their constitution, and it all happens through direct popular vote.
Wow. Okay. That's a level of civic engagement I can only dream of.
It's pretty amazing. It's like having a national town hall meeting every other week. And the crazy part, this system has produced a constitution that's been amended over 200 times since 1848.
200 times.
200!
That's like what, updating your phone's operating system every few months?
It's wild. But it shows how responsive and how adaptable their system is. The Swiss Constitution. It's not some old, dusty document, right, collecting dust on a shelf somewhere. It's a living, breathing reflection of what the people want, their evolving needs and priorities.
Okay, so I'm starting to get why Switzerland is always held up as this model of a successful democracy.
Yeah.
But how, with so many different voices, so many different perspectives, how do they actually get anything done? Like, how do they reach a consensus on anything?
That's the million-dollar question. That's where the real beauty of Swiss democracy lies. They have truly mastered the art of compromise and finding common ground, even when faced with some pretty stark differences.
Okay, so they have the tools, right?
Mm.
They have federalism, they have direct democracy.
Mm.
But how do they actually use them to bring people together?
Let's take their language diversity as an example, right? Remember, we're talking 4 official languages.
Mm.
Imagine trying to force, I don't know, one language or culture on everyone in that kind of system.
Yeah, good luck with that.
Yeah,
I think you'd have a revolution on your hands.
exactly. But Switzerland found a different way. They did the opposite. Instead of trying to erase those differences, they embraced them through their political system.
Okay, how do they manage that? Some political acrobatics there.
They used their decentralized system to their advantage. It's like they looked at this potential language barrier and thought, okay, let's just give each group the space and autonomy to thrive,
Yeah.
in their own language and their own culture.
Okay, I see. So give me an example of how this worked practically.
Sure. Take the Jura region, for example.
Yeah.
This is a predominantly French-speaking area, and it used to be part of the German-speaking canton of Bern.
Okay.
And for decades, there was this tension, right? This feeling of not quite fitting in. So finally, after years of debate and, even some unrest, the Jura region, they exercised their right to self-determination and they formed their own canton in 1979.
So they literally redrew the map to accommodate these linguistic and cultural differences.
Yeah.
That is a bold move.
It really is. But it shows you how seriously they take regional autonomy and the right of different groups to have a say in their own destiny.
That's a really fascinating example of how federalism helped really preserve Switzerland's unity. But what about their class struggles? I mean, Switzerland has this image, right, of being idyllic,
Mm-hmm.
but they have their fair share of social and economic tensions, right?
Absolutely. They had a rising socialist movement in the early 20th century. They had labor strikes. All the ingredients, really, for a potential social explosion, that you saw across Europe at that time.
Right.
So the question is, how did they manage to avoid a revolution?
Yeah, how did they?
Well, again, their political system, it acted like a pressure valve. It channeled those tensions into a more constructive, dialogue and compromise instead of letting it explode into violence.
So instead of a violent revolution, they chose the path of negotiation and integration.
Exactly. And that's where their whole thing with consensus building shines through. It forced different sides to the table. It paved the way for social reforms, and it led to the development of their, quite impressive social safety net.
Okay, so through dialogue and compromise, they managed to integrate these different linguistic groups and kind of address that class conflict. It's starting to feel like Switzerland's political system is like this magical problem-solving machine.
Well, it's not magic, but it is pretty impressive. It's designed to encourage that compromise and consensus. But even the most well-oiled machines, even those can have hiccups, and Switzerland is no exception.
Oh, so even paradise has its problems.
Even the most well-designed systems in the world, they all face their challenges. And for Switzerland, the 21st century, it's ushered in this whole new era, like really complex issues that are testing the limits of their model.
Like what? What could possibly disrupt this system, this harmony?
Well, 2 big ones are reshaping the Swiss landscape: immigration and globalization.
Okay, 2 biggies that are frankly impacting pretty much every country in the world. Let's unpack those. Let's start with immigration. How has that impacted Switzerland's model of, democracy and its ability to integrate all these newcomers?
Imagine this, okay? Over 25% of Switzerland's residents, foreign nationals.
Wow, okay. That's a significant chunk of the population.
It is. And while Switzerland has a history of immigration, the scale, the sheer diversity of the newcomers, especially in recent decades, it's brought about a whole new set of integration challenges. Imagine trying to build consensus when fully a quarter of the room are from completely different backgrounds.
Yeah, it's got to be tough.
Different languages, different expectations for how, a political system should be run.
There definitely adds a whole other layer of complexity to this whole model of consensus democracy.
Absolutely. And it's not just about social harmony, right? It's about making sure that every resident, no matter where they come from, feels like they belong, like they have a stake in the country's future.
So that's immigration. What about globalization? How's that playing out?
Globalization. Globalization is like that friend who shows up unannounced and just flips your whole world upside down.
I know a few of those.
It just keeps pushing for more interconnectedness, breaking down barriers, and it creates this tension, right, for Switzerland between wanting to keep their unique political identity and also needing to be a part of the global economy.
That's a tough one. It's like trying to fit a square peg in a round hole.
You got it. And Switzerland's relationship with the EU makes it even more complicated. So they're not a member of the EU,
Right.
but they depend on the EU for trade and all these collaborations. So they're constantly having to adapt their laws, their regulations to EU standards, which can feel like a compromise.
So how do you walk that line? How do you stay true to yourself, to your identity, while also engaging with this globalized world that's kind of trying to blend everything together? Sounds like a tightrope walk.
It is. And to really understand how they navigate that, we have to dig into this idea of consensus democracy, which is at the core of their whole system.
All right, let's unpack that. What exactly is consensus democracy, and how does it actually work in practice?
Okay, so consensus democracy, it's kind of like imagine a group project, right? Where everyone gets to have their say.
Okay.
Not just the person with, the loudest voice. So it might take a bit longer to get things done,
Right.
but ultimately the final result, it represents everyone's input.
So it's not like one party just gets to push their agenda through. You need buy-in from like a wider range of voices.
You got it. It's all about building those coalitions, right? Finding that common ground and making sure that nobody feels like they're being ignored, like their concerns don't matter.
That sounds like a utopia, honestly, but like incredibly difficult to actually pull off.
Yeah.
Especially in like the real world of politics, right?
You're preaching to the choir here. It takes a lot of political maturity
Yeah.
and a willingness to compromise.
Which, let's be honest, not always a politician's strong suit.
Exactly. But hey, this is what's kept Switzerland relatively stable and prosperous for decades, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, what's the catch? What's the downside to all this? Well, the biggest risk is this whole consensus thing
Yeah.
can lead to a kind of political molasses.
You mean like slow moving?
Yeah, exactly. Like
Yeah.
thick and slow.
Okay.
And the world today, it's moving so fast, right? You need to make quick decisions. You need to act fast.
Right.
A system that's all about consensus, it can struggle to keep up.
So it's like the thing that has been their strength, this consensus building, it could become a weakness in a world that's changing so quickly.
Yeah, exactly. It's like this weird paradox. And it's not just, a theory.
Yeah.
We're actually seeing signs of this happening in Switzerland right now.
Oh, really? Like what? Give me an example.
Look at climate change.
Right? Yeah.
It's this huge global crisis. We all know this. And it requires really fast action.
For sure.
But in Switzerland, with their, love of consensus and their decentralized setup, getting everyone on the same page about, making big, fast changes to environmental policies, it's like herding cats,
It's like trying to decide where to go eat when everyone's got different tastes,
Exactly. And it's not just about climate change. Think of any issue that needs a fast, coordinated response.
Right.
Now try doing that when you need to consider the opinions and the potential vetoes of 26 different cantons.
Yeah. 26 different ways of looking at things.
Plus countless other interest groups, plus a public that is very used to having a say on everything.
Wow.
It's a lot to navigate.
Right. So their system, which was really designed for stability, right, and consensus, it might actually make it harder for them to address those big urgent problems that need a quick solution.
That's the thing, isn't it? It's the paradox.
Like they have this, I don't know, this beautifully crafted, hand-built car, right, with amazing craftsmanship, and then you realize you're like stuck in the slow lane
Yes.
while everyone else is just whizzing by in their Teslas.
Exactly.
So where does that leave Switzerland then? Are they doomed to be stuck in that slow lane?
Right.
Or can they like adapt? Can they take this system that they love and bring it into the 21st century?
That is the million-dollar question.
It really is.
I mean, think about it. From what we've seen so far, their democracy,
Right.
their emphasis on consensus, this aversion to really rapid change, doesn't really scream equipped to handle rapid-fire challenges, does it?
No, not really, no. It sounds like the opposite.
Right.
But maybe there's another side to that coin. Maybe there's something we're missing.
Maybe, yeah. Remember when we were talking about their constitution being amended over 200 times?
Yeah, it's like their national operating system is constantly getting updates.
Yeah, exactly. And as much as things might seem slow sometimes, their system is actually incredibly adaptable.
Okay.
They're really good at reforming, at adjusting over time.
So they're not like the fastest to react, but they can get there when they need to.
Exactly, they find a way.
Okay.
And don't forget about direct democracy.
Oh, yeah, right.
All those referendums, the initiatives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can slow things down, but they can also be really powerful tools for creating change, especially when you have a lot of citizens who really care about an issue.
Right. Yeah, if enough people get behind something, it can gain some serious momentum.
Exactly.
It's like a giant ship. It takes a while to turn, but when it does, watch out.
I like that analogy.
Right.
And there's another cool thing about direct democracy that I haven't mentioned yet.
Oh, what's that?
So it's not just about voting on stuff that politicians put in front of them. You know,
Okay.
citizens can actually get involved in shaping the agenda itself.
Really?
If there's enough people who feel strongly about an issue, they can launch their own initiative
Wow.
and force a national referendum on it.
Wait, so you're telling me that like regular people can say, "Hey, this is important. Let's vote on this," and the government has to listen.
Exactly. It's grassroots democracy in action.
Yeah.
That's kind of amazing, actually. So yeah, their system might be slow, it might be very deliberate, but it also has these like incredible tools for citizens to actually participate and make change happen from like the ground up.
It's pretty cool. It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it?
It really is.
Yeah.
But as cool as this is, and it is really interesting, what can we learn from all this?
Right. That's the question.
Yeah, I mean, what lessons can other countries, especially those that are kind of dealing with so much polarization, right, and gridlock, what can they learn from this Swiss way of doing things?
That's the big question, isn't it?
It feels like we could all use a little less chaos and a little more consensus these days.
You and me both, my friend. You and me both.
Right.
And look, while just copying and pasting the entire Swiss system, probably not the best idea.
Probably not.
It
No.
wouldn't be practical, right? And it might not even be what people want.
Yeah.
But there are definitely elements of their approach that could be really valuable, I think, for other democracies around the world.
Yeah.
Like, think about it. The way they use referendums, the citizen initiatives, it's a way to give people a more direct say in how their country is run.
Like actually empowering people to be active participants in democracy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not just, sitting on the sidelines, voting every few years, and that's it.
Yeah.
And sure, doing something like that would come with its own set of, challenges for sure. But the potential benefits
Well,
in
yeah.
terms of people feeling more connected, feeling like they're actually part of the process.
Yeah, like their voice matters.
Exactly. It could be huge.
It's something to consider for sure.
I think one of the biggest takeaways for me is like the power of decentralization.
Mhm.
This system that they have, where the cantons have so much say in how things are run, it just gives them a level of flexibility that you just don't see in these more, centralized governments.
So like each canton can be its own little like experiment in democracy, trying out different things, finding solutions that work best for them.
Yeah, exactly. And that not only means that people feel more ownership at a local level, it also leads to better policymaking because it's more targeted, it's more effective. They're not trying to force a one-size-fits-all approach, especially in a country where you have so many different languages, cultures all mixed together.
That makes a lot of sense. So decentralization is important, but that's not enough, is it? You still have to be able to bring everyone together to find that common ground at the end of the day.
Absolutely, you hit the nail on the head. And that's where this Swiss commitment to consensus building really comes in. I mean, they've proven that you can have a system where different opinions aren't just tolerated, they're actually sought out. It's part of the process.
It's like they took that saying to heart, the one about if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together.
Yeah, that's it. And the Swiss, they've figured out a way to go far, and they do it together by embracing that dialogue, that willingness to compromise, to find solutions that work for as many people as possible.
It's a beautiful thing in theory, but I gotta imagine it can't always be easy to get everyone to agree, especially in today's world where it feels like everything's so polarized.
Oh, absolutely. It's not all sunshine and rainbows. I mean, even in Switzerland, they have their critics of the system. Some people say it's too slow, that it's bogged down in bureaucracy, and that all this focus on compromise just leads to these really watered down solutions where nobody gets what they really want.
So not a perfect system, though.
No system is, but even with those weaknesses, the Swiss model, it gets us a lot to think about,
Right.
Like how to build a democracy that's stable, it's inclusive, and it can actually bounce back from tough times.
Yeah, it's like they found this secret recipe for long-term political stability.
Something like that. They've
Yeah.
managed to prioritize the long game, focusing on those lasting solutions that help everyone, not just quick fixes that really only benefit a few.
It really makes you wonder, are there like specific parts of this model that other countries could actually take and use?
I don't think it's as easy as just copying everything, but there are definitely things that can be inspiring, like the way they use referendums, letting citizens propose initiatives, That's one way to give people a more direct voice, to give them a stake in their own future.
Yeah, it's about empowering people to really participate in their democracy,
Hmm.
not just, be a spectator.
Exactly. And sure, putting something like that in place, it would be tough, there would be hurdles, but think of the payoff, you know? People would feel more engaged, they'd trust the government more. It could be huge.
Definitely a lot to consider there. As we kind of wrap up our deep dive into Swiss democracy, I'm honestly a little blown away and maybe a little jealous.
Hmm.
Their system, for all its, little quirks and complications, it has created something remarkable, like a level of stability and prosperity that, frankly, most countries can only dream of.
It really is remarkable, isn't it? It just goes to show you how powerful it can be when you really put thought into your systems and you are truly dedicated to finding common ground, even when things get tough and people disagree.
Couldn't have said it better myself. This has been a really eye-opening journey. We've learned a lot about what makes Swiss democracy tick, that's for sure.
It's been a pleasure diving in with you.
Absolutely. And while, their model isn't something you can just plop down anywhere, there are absolutely some valuable lessons here. For anyone really who's interested in building a fairer, a more equal and just, more resilient society, for everyone,
I completely agree.
it's a good reminder that there are many ways to build a democracy. And to meet those challenges that the world throws at us, we need to be creative. We need to be able to adapt. That's key.
Well said.
Make sure to follow us so you don't miss our next deep dive. Cast your vote, like you hit subscribe. Fast, effective, and always appreciated.